The night sky above Earth was quiet, but hidden behind the stars. Something waited. It was not a meteor, not a passing shadow, but a fleet of alien warships. They floated in silence, dark and cold, their hulls shaped like blades of black glass. Inside those ships, thousands of alien soldiers stood ready for years. Their leaders had planned this mission. They had studied human transmissions, human maps, and human history. They believed Earth was weak, a planet divided by small nations, a world busy fighting itself. The aliens were sure that humans would surrender quickly. Why resist a power that could burn oceans and crush cities in seconds? The commander of the fleet was called Xiren. His armor was silver like frozen metal, his voice low and sharp. He stood on the command deck and looked at Earth through a glowing screen. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds, a simple planet. Yet it carried the species he had been told to conquer. Humans, Xiren whispered to his second officer. They are noisy, emotional, and foolish, but dangerous only to themselves. The officer nodded, though his eyes carried a small doubt. Reports said humans had survived many disasters. Fire, flood, war, plague, but Xiren laughed. Survival is not strength, survival is luck. The alien soldiers inside the fleet sharpened their weapons. Their armor hissed with hidden power, their claws ready for battle. They trained in silence, moving in rhythm, their eyes burning with cold discipline. They were told the humans would run. They were told the humans would kneel. They were told the humans would break. Yet before any attack, the High Council of the fleet gave one order: study them first. Know the mind of the human before crushing the body. The order was wise, for knowledge was a weapon sharper than any blade. So the aliens released small scout drones into Earth's atmosphere. Invisible machines slipped past satellites and human radar. They entered cities, towns, and villages. They recorded human speech, human laughter, human anger. They searched for the heart of humanity. What makes them strong? What makes them weak? When the data returned, the soldiers gathered in the great hall of the flagship. Holoscreens lit the air with strange images. Humans in strange clothes carrying weapons, fighting endless battles, explosions, smoke, fire raining from the sky, men and women running into gunfire without fear. Alien eyes widened at the sight. At first, Xiren smiled. Good, they kill each other. They are violent and foolish, but the officer frowned. Look closer, Commander. These humans did not fight for greed. They fought for survival, for family, for land. They fought with courage even when the chance of victory was none. Another film played. Soldiers climbed out of trenches, faces covered in mud, bullets flying. Not one turned back. All charged forward. The aliens whispered to each other. Do they fight like this every day? Another film showed fire from the sky, giant machines rolling through ruined cities. Yet humans kept fighting, small figures standing against endless steel. The alien soldiers shifted nervously. Some felt a cold weight inside their chest. Others laughed weakly, saying, This must be old history. These are records of past wars. But doubt spread like smoke. If this was their past, then what would their present be? Xiren raised his hand for silence. These are only stories, nothing more, he declared. Humans tell lies to entertain themselves. But in his heart, a shadow began to grow. He had seen the fire in human eyes on the screen. It was not the fire of machines. It was the fire of will. The soldiers left the hall, their steps heavy, their minds clouded. Whispers began to move from group to group. Did you see how they charged without fear? Did you see how they fought until the last breath? Are these creatures even mortal? The night above Earth remained calm. Humans slept under their skies, unaware of the watchers above, but inside the alien fleet. Something had begun to change. The mission that looked simple now looked uncertain, and in the silence of space, fear made its first quiet step. The alien fleet drifted above Earth in silence. Inside the flagship, tension hung heavy. The soldiers had watched strange human images the night before. Many still whispered about them, some with laughter, some with unease. Commander Xiren did not like whispers. Fear was poison to discipline, and he needed his soldiers sharp. So he ordered the scouts to dig deeper into human culture. Bring me their secrets, he commanded. Show me what truly drives them. The drones obeyed. They swam through data streams, breaking human codes with ease. They tapped into satellites, networks, storage banks. The aliens expected maps, blueprints, weapons designs. Instead, the drones returned with something stranger. Endless rows of human recordings. glowing with fire and shadows. At first, the aliens thought these were archives of battles, real records of human wars, stored for study and pride. The files were given one simple name: films. But the aliens did not understand this word. To them, the images were truth. To them, every scene was history. Zirin gathered his officers and soldiers in the hall once again. The first film began to play. Dark skies, soldiers in metal helmets. Explosions lighting the night. Men charged through mud and blood, never slowing, never breaking. The aliens leaned forward, eyes wide. They had seen training drills before, but never this madness. The next recording showed giant machines of steel. Tanks rolling across open fields. Spitting fire, men ran beside them, fearless. Shouting words of courage, the air shook with thunder. But still they pressed forward, not a single human turned away. The aliens shifted uneasily in their seats. Are these recreations? One officer whispered. Perhaps these are lessons. Memories of their past, another said. But no one knew for sure. The humans fought in every film as if death meant nothing. They fought against impossible odds. And yet in many of these films they triumphed. The soldiers in the fleet began to imagine, if such battles were real, then human history was carved in endless war. If these were stories, then even their imagination was soaked in blood and fire. Both answers were terrifying. The films continued, one after another. Alien eyes saw human pilots diving their planes into swarms of enemies. They saw soldiers holding the line while cities burned. They saw men and women standing shoulder to shoulder against monsters. Machines and enemies far larger than themselves. Every time humans refused to yield. Every time humans fought to the end. By the third hour, silence filled the hall. No alien dared to laugh, no alien dared to whisper. They only stared at the screens, hearts pounding with a strange dread. Commander Zirin forced a smile. These are nothing but entertainment. Simple illusions, he declared. Do not let such things poison your courage. But even he could not hide the tremor in his voice. The images were too raw, too real, too powerful. One young soldier, barely out of training, finally spoke. If they can imagine such battles, does it not mean they are prepared to fight them? No one answered, but many felt the same thought. How could a species create endless visions of war unless it was carved deep in their nature? Soon rumors spread through the fleet. Some whispered that humans trained their young with these films. Others believed humans kept them as warnings for the future. A few even suggested these were not stories but real broadcasts from human wars. The fear grew like wildfire, impossible to stop. That night, alien soldiers gathered in secret corners of the ship. They replayed the films again and again, whispering among themselves. Did you see the humans who fought with knives against tanks? Did you see the soldiers who ran into fire without armor? Do they not fear death at all? Zirin ordered the recordings locked. He banned the soldiers from watching them again, but it was already too late. Copies of the films had spread through the fleet like a virus. Every alien soldier had seen enough. Enough to believe that humans were not weak prey but fire-born warriors. In the quiet of his chamber, Zirin sat alone. He replayed one scene on his private screen. A human commander standing tall, face dirty, voice steady. "Hold the line," the man shouted. Around him, explosions tore the earth. Yet the human stood and obeyed. Zirin clenched his claws. He had led armies across many worlds. He had seen bravery, but never like this. Outside his chamber, the fleet floated in silence. The soldiers no longer trained with the same rhythm. Their eyes carried shadows, their hearts carried questions. If humans truly fought as these films showed, then what would happen when alien steel met human will? The discovery of human war films was meant to be a simple study, but instead it became a weapon more dangerous than any missile. Not against Earth, but against the alien soldiers themselves. Fear had entered their hearts, and once fear entered, it never left. The great hall of the alien flagship was silent. The glow of the hollow screens had faded, but the images remained in every soldier's mind. Human soldiers charging through fire, human pilots diving into storms of bullets, human tanks crushing impossible enemies. No one spoke, yet fear whispered in the air. Commander Zirin walked among his troops. He looked into their eyes and saw shadows he did not like. Soldiers who once stood tall now shifted nervously, claws tapping against the floor. Whispers spread like smoke. Did you see the man who kept fighting after his arm was gone? Did you see the woman who ran into fire to save her friend? The words spread, the doubts grew. One officer tried to restore order. Enough, he shouted. These are nothing but illusions. But the soldiers no longer listened. To them, the films were not illusions. They were windows into the human soul, and what they saw inside that soul was terrifying. Later in the training chambers, alien squads practiced their drills, but their movements were slower, their strikes weaker. Every time they raised their weapons, their minds flashed with human images. How could they match the madness of creatures who charged tanks with only rifles? How could they defeat enemies who smiled in the face of death? In the mess halls, food lay untouched. Soldiers sat in silence, replaying scenes in their heads. Some trembled, others stared into nothing. One young soldier finally whispered, "If humans fight like this in stories, then how do they fight in real life?" The question spread, unanswered like a disease. The next evening, a new film appeared on the screens. The scouts had found it by accident, hidden deep in a human archive. This one was darker, louder, more violent than all before. Cities crumbled, skies burned. Soldiers fought until only ashes remained. When the final explosion lit the screen, not a single alien breathed. Siren rose, his voice strong but his heart unsteady. "These are inventions, nothing more," he declared. "Humans use them to entertain themselves, not to train." But his words no longer carried weight. His soldiers had seen too much. Their minds no longer believed in weakness. They believed in monsters wearing human skin. Rumors spread faster than orders. Some claimed humans fought wars on every continent at the same time. Others said humans had survived entire world-ending conflicts. A few whispered that humans destroyed their own cities just to learn how to rebuild them stronger. Truth and lies mixed together. But the effect was the same. Fear turned into certainty. Certainty turned into dread in the sleeping quarters. Soldiers whispered in the dark. "I will not fight such demons," one said. "They charge without fear of death," another muttered. "They are not like us, they are something else." One soldier, shaking, asked the question none dared to answer. What if they are not even afraid of us? Across the fleet, discipline began to break. Drills were skipped, orders ignored, weapons left unclean. Instead of preparing for invasion, soldiers gathered to talk of humans. The films were replayed in secret, each viewing spreading more terror. Every new soldier who watched left the hall quieter than before. Every mind carried the same heavy thought. How can we fight what does not fear death? Siren tried to crush the fear. He ordered the films erased. He punished those who spread rumors. But for every file destroyed, 3 more appeared. The recordings had multiplied across the fleet like living shadows. No wall, no lock, no band could stop them. One night, Siren found 2 of his own guards whispering. They did not see him at first, and he heard their words clearly. "Commander says they are lies," one muttered. "But lies do not make me tremble," the other answered. "If they are lies, then their lies are more powerful than our truth." Siren's chest grew cold. If even his guards doubted, then his army was already breaking. The fear was not only in the lower ranks. Even officers stared too long at the screens. Even veterans who had fought on 10 worlds walked with slower steps. Some dreamed at night of human faces, shouting in battle, never surrendering. They woke in cold sweat, claws trembling. The fear of humans had followed them into their sleep. Outside, Earth continued its quiet orbit. The humans below had no idea what storm of terror grew above them. They lived their days, laughed, worked, and dreamed, completely unaware that alien soldiers watched them with shaking hearts. In the command chamber, Siren stood before the Council of Captains. "Control your troops," one demanded. "They are soft, they are weak," another growled. But none of their words carried true conviction. For they too had seen the films. They too had felt the fire in human eyes. And though they spoke of control, their voices trembled. The fear of humans was no longer a rumor. It was no longer a whisper. It had become a truth inside every alien soldier. A truth that broke discipline, broke courage, broke the will to fight. The war had not yet begun, and already the aliens were losing. The alien fleet floated above Earth in perfect formation. From a distance, the ships looked calm, cold and unshaken. But inside the steel halls, another war was already happening. A war of words, whispers, and fear. It began with a single rumor. One soldier whispered to another. Humans once burned half their own world and still survived. The other soldier repeated it in the mess hall, adding, not only survived, but grew stronger. By the next cycle, the story had reached every corner of the fleet. What started as a whisper had become a warning. More rumors followed. They say humans fought creatures taller than mountains, one soldier murmured. I heard they drowned an enemy fleet in fire, using their own sky as a weapon, another added. They say humans keep fighting even when they are dead. Their spirit refuses to leave the battlefield, a third whispered. The story spread like wildfire, each one darker and stranger than the last. In the sleeping quarters, groups of soldiers gathered in secret. They replayed fragments of the human films, pausing on moments of madness. A soldier pointed at the screen. See how he smiles, even when fire surrounds him. Another shivered. That is not a warrior. That is a demon. Each soldier added their own fear, until the story grew larger than the truth. By the fourth day, the rumors were no longer whispers. They were spoken loudly with conviction, as if they were facts. One officer heard his squad declare, humans have fought 1,000 wars and never lost. Another claimed, they destroyed entire worlds with their own hands. The officers tried to silence them, but their own voices shook with doubt. Even leaders began to wonder, how much of this could be true? Commander Zyron summoned his captains. His voice thundered through the chamber. Control your soldiers. Crush these lies, but the captains exchanged uneasy glances. They too had heard the whispers, and deep inside they too wondered, what if these were not lies? What if these stories carried some truth? The fear of humans had now become something worse. It had become a legend, and legends were more dangerous than armies. One night in the lower decks, two young soldiers argued. The commander says the humans are weak, one insisted. Then why do they fight like gods in every film? The other replied, they are actors, illusions. The first said weakly. Then why do I dream of them at night? The second whispered, trembling. Silence fell between them, for neither had an answer. As the rumors grew, discipline broke further. Drills were forgotten, patrols skipped, weapons left unsharpened. When officers barked orders, soldiers obeyed slowly, reluctantly. They no longer feared their leaders. They feared the humans they had never met. Some soldiers began refusing duties. One squad openly declared, we will not face creatures who smile at death. Another squad muttered, let the machines fight them, not us. The fleet's strength began to crumble from within, not by battle but by whispers. Zyron watched with rage. He had commanded armies across galaxies, crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, but he had never seen fear spread so quickly. It was invisible, unstoppable, eating his army from the inside. He ordered the destruction of every human film in the archives, but it was useless. The recordings had already been copied, shared, hidden. Every soldier carried them in private data chips, replaying them when no one was watching. The films had become sacred, cursed objects feeding their nightmares. The council of captains met in secret. One captain admitted, my soldiers refuse to drill. They whisper of human ghosts, another growled. Half of my unit pretends to be sick. They say their hearts are too heavy to fight. A third captain lowered his voice. Even I cannot sleep, I see those human eyes in my dreams. Siren slammed his claw against the table. The sound sharp and cold. We are the hunters. Not the hunted, he roared. But no one looked convinced. Meanwhile, in the lower ranks, the rumors grew darker still. They say humans drink fire to make themselves strong. They say they train children to fight before they can even walk. They say every human has a second heart that beats only in battle. No story was too wild, no fear too strange. The more absurd the rumor, the faster it spread. By the seventh day, soldiers no longer spoke of invasion. They spoke only of survival. How do we fight such creatures? What weapon could kill a demon that does not die? Some even whispered of desertion. Better to be punished than to face the monsters of Earth. From the command deck, Zyron looked down at the blue planet. He clenched his claws, refusing to believe his army was breaking. Yet the truth was clear before they had even set foot on Earth. His soldiers were already defeated. Not by human weapons, but by human stories. The rumors had done what no army could. They had turned the hunters into prey. They had turned steel into trembling hands. And in the shadows of the fleet, fear ruled as king. The alien fleet hung above Earth like a dark storm. From outside it still looked strong, silent and ready for war. But inside the ships, cracks had grown too deep to hide. Fear had taken root, and now it began to bloom into open rebellion. It started with a single soldier. He walked into his officer's chamber, his claws trembling. I resign, he said, his voice shaking but firm. The officer's eyes widened. Resign? From the invasion? Yes, the soldier answered. I will not face humans. Not after what I have seen. The officer threatened punishment, but the soldier only lowered his head. Punish me, kill me if you must. But I will not step onto that planet. The story spread like lightning. Soon another soldier followed, then another. Each came forward with the same words. We will not fight them. One claimed he saw humans survive fire that swallowed cities. Another swore humans destroyed an enemy fleet with their bare hands. Whether true or false, the stories gave them courage to refuse. The officers tried to silence the rebels, but every punishment created more defiance. When one soldier was locked away for refusing orders, 3 more declared they would not fight. When another was stripped of rank, his entire squad resigned in protest. The fleet's iron discipline was turning to dust. In the lower decks, soldiers gathered in groups. Some whispered in fear, others shouted in anger. We were told humans were weak, one cried. But we see their battles with our own eyes, another replied. They are not prey, they are predators. One group openly demanded release from service. We did not sign up to fight demons, they said, their voices trembling but united. Commander Zyron's fury shook the flagship. He roared at his captains, crush this sickness before it spreads further. But the captains could not, for the sickness was already everywhere. It was in the barracks, in the training halls, in the very heart of the fleet. Even the captains themselves had doubts they could not speak aloud. In desperation, Zyron ordered a great assembly. Every soldier in the fleet was called to stand before him. The hall was vast, filled with thousands of armored figures. Zyron's voice thundered, You are warriors of the stars. Not cowards hiding from stories, he raised his claws high. Humans are fragile, short-lived creatures. Their films are lies. But as his words echoed, the silence of the soldiers grew heavier. Not a cheer rose, not a shout of loyalty, only cold, unblinking stares. Finally, one soldier stepped forward. He removed his helmet and let it fall to the floor with a metallic clang. I will not fight, he declared, his voice steady. Gasps spread through the hall. Another soldier followed, dropping his weapon. I will not fight either. Then another, until weapons and helmets rained onto the floor like a storm of metal. Zyron's claws clenched so tight they bled. He roared for guards to arrest them, but the guards themselves hesitated, their eyes darting nervously. Some even lowered their weapons. Unwilling to harm their own comrades, the chain of command was snapping. Link by link across the fleet, chaos grew. Entire squads refused to drill. Officers found their soldiers missing. Hiding in the lower decks, some soldiers sent messages home, declaring they would never fight humans. Others begged to be reassigned to distant worlds, anywhere but Earth. In the mess hall, the air was filled with arguments. One officer shouted, We are trained for war. We cannot walk away. But a soldier stood and answered, Trained for war, yes, but not trained to fight death itself, another added. You cannot order courage into a broken heart. The officer could only stand in silence, for no command could erase the fear. The resignations became so many that records overflowed. Files piled high with names of soldiers who refused the mission. Zyron tore the lists apart, shouting they were lies. But the truth could not be shredded. The truth was that his army was dissolving. The Council of Captains met in secret once more. One spoke softly. If this continues, half the fleet will abandon us, another admitted. Already, my men speak of surrender before battle even begins. Zyron slammed his fist on the table. They will obey or they will burn. But even as he said it, he knew the fire in his words was hollow, for no punishment could kill the fear that lived in their hearts. On the lower decks, soldiers continued to gather. Some spoke of desertion, others of rebellion, one whispered. Perhaps humans are not even the enemy. Perhaps they are the warning of the universe. The others nodded, unable to argue, for in their minds humans had become more than flesh and blood. They had become a nightmare that no soldier wished to face. Above Earth, the alien fleet remained in place, but inside its strength was fading fast. An army without courage is no army at all, and as resignation spread like fire, the once mighty invaders were already crumbling. The alien fleet still floated above Earth. Its black hulls glimmered like blades in the night sky. From far below, humans never suspected what waited in orbit, but inside those ships the proud army of conquerors was rotting. What had begun as whispers had grown into resignations, and now resignations had spread into something worse. Morale, the invisible force that held soldiers together, was collapsing once alien soldiers marched with perfect rhythm, their steps sharp as steel. Now they walked slowly, shoulders heavy, eyes haunted. In the training chambers, drills were empty. Rows of soldiers that once clashed in practice now stood silent. Refusing to move, officers shouted, their voices echoing through the halls. But their commands fell into air as heavy as stone. The soldiers no longer feared their officers. They feared the humans in the films, the humans who charged into death without blinking. Commander Zirin watched from the balcony above. His eyes burned with rage as he saw his warriors unmoving. Once they were the terror of worlds, now they looked like shadows. Every order he gave cracked against the wall of silence, and silence was worse than rebellion. Even among the captains, doubts had spread. One captain confessed quietly during council, "My soldiers will not eat." They whisper of human eyes watching them. Another captain muttered, "Half my unit refuses to touch their weapons. They say weapons are useless against such creatures." The third captain looked down, ashamed. "I dreamed of them last night. I saw humans charging even after fire consumed them." The chamber grew cold as the words sank in. Iron slammed his claws against the table. "You are leaders, not frightened hatchlings," he roared. "Fear is weakness, and weakness is death." But as his voice thundered, he noticed his own words felt hollow. His captains did not rise in defiance. They only stared at the floor. They too were breaking. The collapse of morale showed itself in small, deadly ways. Weapons left uncharged, armor left unsealed, engines left unchecked. Orders delayed, messages ignored, drills skipped. Each soldier believed the others would fight while he himself hid in fear. And soon no one was ready at all. Rumors twisted even darker. They say humans train their dead to rise again. They say every human battlefield becomes cursed. No enemy survives its memory. They say humans laugh at death because they have already defeated it. The more absurd the stories, the stronger they became. Truth no longer mattered, only fear. One evening in the Great Hall, another film appeared. The scouts had recovered it despite Zirin's bans. It showed cities burning, skies black with smoke. Humans stood against endless waves of enemies, their faces scarred but their eyes unbroken. The aliens watched in silence, their claws trembling. When the final human stood alone, bleeding but unyielding, a cry escaped from one soldier. "We cannot win!" The cry spread, echoed, multiplied. Soon dozens of voices shouted the same words. "We cannot win. We cannot win." The officers tried to silence them, but their own voices cracked with fear. Even Zirin felt the truth of it pressing against his chest. For in his heart he too had begun to wonder, what if they truly could not win? The collapse grew worse each day in the barracks. Soldiers tore off their armor and refused to wear it again. In the mess halls, fights broke out as fear turned to anger. Some demanded retreat, others demanded desertion. One group even spoke of surrendering to humans before battle began. The once proud army was devouring itself. Zirin stood before his soldiers one last time. He raised his weapon high, his voice shaking the hall. "Listen to me. You are warriors of the stars, you have conquered 100 worlds." But his words met only silence. No roar of loyalty, no echo of courage, just silence. Heavy and endless, then. From the back of the hall, a soldier spoke. "You ask us to fight, Commander, but would you fight them yourself?" The words cut through the silence like a blade. Zirin froze, his chest heavy. Would he fight humans face to face? The thought stabbed into him like fire, and he realized his own heart gave no answer. When the commander himself cannot answer, the army is already lost. That night, entire squads abandoned their posts. Some locked themselves in their chambers, refusing all contact. Others gathered in secret to plan escape. And a few simply walked to their officers and said, "We resign, do what you want with us, but we will not fight humans." The collapse of morale was complete. The ships still floated above Earth, their weapons ready, their engines strong. But inside, the army was hollow, their courage broken, their unity shattered, their will gone. They were no longer an invasion force. They were prisoners of their own fear, and Earth remained below, unaware of the storm that had already destroyed its enemies without a single shot fired. The alien fleet floated in orbit, dark and silent. From Earth's surface, the stars looked the same. No human knew that an invasion force trembled above their world. But inside those ships, the once proud soldiers had already surrendered in their hearts. Commander Zirin stood at the viewing deck. He stared at the blue and green planet below. His claws tightened around the rail, but his chest was heavy. His army had fallen apart without a single human weapon raised against them. The soldiers no longer obeyed. The captains no longer commanded, even he, the commander, no longer believed in the lower decks. Groups of soldiers whispered of escape. Some begged their officers to turn back. Others swore they would never set foot on Earth. The word retreat was spoken more and more. Not in defiance now, but in desperate pleading. Finally, one captain spoke aloud what all feared to say. "We cannot invade," he whispered during council. Xiron's eyes burned. "Cowardice," he growled. But another captain nodded. "No, it is truth." One by one, voices joined. "My soldiers refuse to move. My squads have abandoned their posts. My men would rather die here than fight down there." The chamber filled not with strategy, but with surrender. Xiron tried to roar them back to courage, but even his voice was weak. Deep inside, he knew the truth. The army was broken. The invasion was impossible. If he forced them to land, they would scatter like frightened insects. And the shame of open rebellion would burn his name forever. So he chose the path of silence. He stood before his captains and said, "We will not call it defeat. We will call it wisdom." He raised his claws high. "We shall tell the council that Earth is not worth the blood of our soldiers." But everyone in the room knew it was a lie. Still, they accepted it because it was easier than admitting the truth. Orders were given quietly. Engines powered up. But no alarms were sounded. Ships shifted formation slowly, as if drifting with the stars from below. Humans saw nothing unusual. No war, no fire, no storm in the sky. Just the calm night while their invaders slipped away. In the barracks, soldiers exhaled in relief. Helmets were thrown aside. Weapons dropped, some wept, others laughed nervously. They had escaped a battle they believed no one could survive. Yet none dared to admit their relief openly. For every smile carried the shadow of shame. Xiron walked the halls. He saw his soldiers slumped in corners, their eyes hollow. They had not fought, yet they looked like survivors of war. Their minds broken, their courage gone, the commander clenched his claws tighter. He had not lost to humans, not in battle, and yet, in his heart, he knew he had lost something far worse. As the fleet prepared to depart, a final rumor spread. Some soldiers claimed the humans knew they were there. "They let us live," one whispered. "They watched us tremble and allowed us to go." Others said humans had no need to fight. Perhaps their films were warnings, messages to keep us away. The whispers spread, each one heavier than the last. By the time the engines flared, many believed Earth itself had chosen to spare them. The retreat began without trumpets, without speeches, one by one. The ships turned their noses away from Earth. Their great engines lit the darkness, and silently, the invasion fleet slid back into the endless void. Not a single shot had been fired. Not a single battle had been fought. Yet the aliens fled as if beaten by the strongest enemy they had ever faced. In the command deck, Xiron gave the final order. "Set course for home," he said quietly. No pride in his voice, no victory in his tone. Only the weight of defeat, heavier than any battle wound. As Earth shrank behind them, some soldiers dared to look back. The blue planet floated in silence, calm and unaware, but to the aliens, it looked like a world of fire and shadow, a world where warriors were born from nightmare, a world no army should ever touch. The retreat was silent, but the shame was loud. Every soldier carried it in his chest. Every captain lowered his head. And Commander Xiron knew his fleet would never again be the same. They had faced no battle, yet they had lost everything. The war that never happened had scarred them deeper than any real war. And as the stars swallowed their ships, one truth remained unspoken. They had not left Earth by choice. They had been driven away by fear. Fear of humans, fear of the unknown, fear of the fire in mortal eyes. The silent retreat had begun, and it would haunt them forever.